Greetings, fellow Beyonders. I am your humble host and scribe, Sven, and this is Beyond the Worlds Beyond. The primary purpose of this series will be exploring the lore and story within these campaigns. In this episode, we'll be looking at the second episode of The Wizard, the Witch, and the Wild One, titled The Naming of Things. We'll be doing a quick summary of the episode and then diving into the lore questions that it raises and those that it answers. We return to the game as the mysterious stranger fully arrives at the cottage amidst the untimely arrival of night. He presents himself as a powerful spirit, a friend of Grandmother Wren's coming to pay respects and seeking entrance to the cottage. 3 loud knocks. Ame requesting he provide his name 3 times. 3 steps back from the door before finally answering. This is the pilgrim under the stars. The man in black, the King of Night. Denying him entry, Ame instead asks him to return later, and a date is set. 1 year, and he shall return. With that, he vanishes, and with him the night that had come early, leaving the cottage once again in daytime, though not without the marks of his passing. Food has spoiled, Suvi's mirror has shattered, and a ward of protection over the door sizzles and smolders. We also learn that the more titles by which a spirit is known, the better to hide its true name, the more powerful it tends to be. The King of Night, with 3 that we've heard, ranks among the most powerful of which Suvi has heard of. We also learn, among the documents Suvi was given to bring to Grandmother Wren, of the Mages of Galthme. One of the forces at war with the Empire, their mages, of which Yoren was one, have the ability to take strange bestial forms. Ame and Suvi then begin their preparations to depart in search of Ursulon, the first being visiting the shrine to the nature spirit of the stream, Daomai, or, as they have always called him, Mr. Soup. In addition to promising to look after and care for the cottage while they are gone, Mr. Soup also assists Ame in summoning her familiar, the fox. A wonderful little butthole of a familiar who adapts with surprising ease to suddenly being able to talk and understand human concepts, though holds on to his own worldview among these changes. Now, with the fox able to track Ursulon's scent, they set out in search of their brother, eventually finding him in the city of Joris. Here, in a scene we encountered, if in a somewhat shortened form in the Wild One preview, they encounter him among the troop of J.B. Adelaide. Learning that he no longer has the sword, Wavebreaker, that they require, they recover his music box from Adelaide and, reunited, our trio begins the next step of their quest to recover the sword. Before we start asking new questions, let's take a look at the ones we've asked before and see which, if any, we now have answers for. So we now know one of the forces that the Empire is at war with, Galthme, though we do not yet know if this is the Dominion, the Protectorate, or a third force entirely. It also tells us more about Yoren, as we now know his shapeshifting was magical in nature, but that these mages are not considered wizards, at least by the Empire. This further cements my personal opinion that Yoren is, at least in mechanical stats, a druid. We have learned that Akam refers to the island on which Joris, Silbury, Toma, and presumably Port Talon are located. We also had a quick answer to the apparent twisting of time. It is not a factor of the curse upon Grandmother Wren and the rest, but the approach of the King of Night. So it seems unrelated to the forces acting against them, unless the king stands among them, but to me he feels like another matter entirely. So the first of the new questions is, of course, what exactly is the King of Night? Is he a spirit, or perhaps the spirit of death, or more of a psychopomp that transports the souls of the dead, as opposed to being a facet of death itself? To me, he feels more powerful than the latter, and the impacts he leaves in his wake, such as spoiled food, suggest this as well. So I think he definitely is a death spirit, and possibly death with a capital D itself. Which brings us to why he was arriving now. Was he truly, as he said, a friend of Grandmother Wren coming to show his respects, or is his intent more malicious and nefarious than that? It's honestly really hard to tell. His presence is so foreboding, it of course makes one wish to believe the worst, but at the same time, he was never overtly hostile nor demanding, and left easily enough once the new deal of returning in a year was made. If he was trying to capture Ren's soul or some other vile deed, one would think he would have been more forceful or more sly in his attempts, even if taboos kept him unable to enter on his own. It is entirely within the realm of belief that someone as magical and powerful as Grandmother Wren would have friends as strange as this. Of course, a lack of active malice is not the same as safety, and I do suspect that things would have been very dangerous for Suvi and Ame had he been granted entrance, even if he meant them no direct ill will. The observation of the nature of Taro compared to Grandmother Wren and the fox compared to Ame brings up a question of a which is familiar and how it related to them. Is it that a familiar balances out the traits of their witch, such as Taro being a bit of a jerk compared to Wren's love, sweetness, and patience? Or is it that the familiar instead is the outlet for those traits that a witch tries to hold back, if not repress? Ame, as a child, needed a reminder to be kind and seems to have grown into that command, and now we have the fox that is, in turn, a trickster. It'll be interesting to see how the fox grows alongside Ame. Another question is, why was Steele sending Grandmother Wren information on Ghaltmay mages, including Yorin? Was this information Wren had requested in her investigation about Suvi's parents, or is this a misdirection if Steele is in on whatever happened to them? If she knew that Grandmother Wren had not been able to warn Ame and Suvi about who to trust and not to trust, then this would be the perfect way to seed doubt about Yorin if they encounter him in the future. A question I had but forgot to raise when we witnessed the play the first time in the Wild One preview is the nature of Bryony. Presumably, by his name, one assumes Sir Gallant is solely a fictional figure, but is Bryony a real place within Umora, or is it solely fictional as well? Similarly, was the ogre a singular spirit creature, or are they a race of beings as they are in other worlds and settings? If singular, was it too fictional, or does it have a basis in reality? That's all for this installment of Beyond the Worlds Beyond. As always, please feel free to throw your own questions and theories in the comments, as I love hearing what others latched on to. I've been your host, Sven, and thank you very much for listening. Farewell for now, fellow Beyonders.